Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.
On this episode of Defense News Weekly, we head down to the Warrior Games in Orlando, Florida to watch some of the military's grittiest service members compete for sports supremacy. And shoot, move, and communicate. The Army looks to upgrade its field comms. It's the latest in news and analysis from the Pentagon to the platoon, here on Defense News Weekly. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Andrea Scott. Coming at you this week from Disney World in Orlando, Florida, where we're here to cover the best in adaptive sports at the 2022 Warrior Games. Hundreds of elite athletes from around the services and the world have convened here to compete for titles in everything from wheelchair rugby to powerlifting and many more events. Hosted by the Army's Training and Doctrine Command, for many it's a chance to stay healthy and competitive after a serious injury or illness. And for others, it's about a lot more. We spoke to one athlete going the extra distance in this year's games, vying for the title of Ultimate Champion. Here's her story.
Never powerlifted before. When I signed up for my very first AFW2 event, they have you do a little checklist where you put in like all the events that you want to participate in. And I had accidentally checked the powerlifting box and the form wouldn't let me uncheck it. I was just finishing up like radiation and I just felt weak and it was very intimidating. But then after I attended my first event, I looked at like some of my teammates and like how strong they felt. And I realized like it doesn't matter what body type you are, everyone's a power lifter. I was actually in 2018 diagnosed with a rare head and neck cancer. I was in my third trimester of my third pregnancy in 3.5 years. So I've been, had done it once or twice. And at the very end I was getting headaches, which I had never experienced before in any of my other pregnancies. So I knew something was off. And they realized there's a bump on the roof of my mouth and it was a tumor and the cancer was invading my nerves in my head. So literally I had my third child, our daughter, came on May 14th. And that was the same morning where we were in the hospital with my head and neck surgeon and he was giving us the results in the MRI. So I will never forget that day. I had a surgery a month or two later where it's called a maxillectomy. They remove your upper jaw. And then I rolled into radiation. So I had 30 treatments of that where they do head and neck. So, but fortunately or unfortunately, my cancer doesn't respond to chemo. So I didn't have to go through that. So whenever you're diagnosed with something or you go through an injury, you really start thinking about like, I can't, I won't be able to do this again, I can't do this anymore. And unfortunately, wherever your attention goes, I feel like that's where your energy flows, right? And that can be a dangerous spiral where you continually go down. But AFW2 really helps us to re-vector our focus and focus on what we can achieve. And what I came to learn is with a lot of hard work, determination, and just the support system that we have, for me specifically, I can be faster than I was 10 years ago. I can be stronger, especially in powerlifting, than I ever thought I could be. I can learn to swim at 38, where before, I just maybe doggy paddled or got through the pool, and now I know how to glide. So yeah, the whole program really helps you to understand that you can do anything. So this year I'll be competing in Ultimate Champion, and basically we compete in all the individual sports. So that's cycling, track, powerlifting, field, swimming, archery, shooting, and I think that's it. For me personally, I do have experience being an athlete, on team sports. So the endurance, those kind of things are okay, like I find easy. What comes hard to me is the mental sports. So specifically like archery, shooting, field, things that like technique matters, and there's so many different parts to like a throw or towards your draw in archery that like I said, getting out of your mind and overcoming those, like the negative self-talk, is the most difficult for me. My inspiration is my children. I want them to see that no matter, they're going to hit something hard in their life. Something's going to happen no matter what. It might not be like a serious illness or an injury, but it's going to be something that knocks them down. And I want them to, I don't want to just tell them like you can get through it, but I want to model it. I want to show them they can do whatever they put their mind to. So that's why I feel it's important that I try all these different sports. And also it's fun. I do it because it's enjoyable. I'm gonna have to save pictures because my kids are still kind of young to understand. Like they'll see me go work out in our garage, or they'll see me like ride the spin bike in our basement, and they'll come. So really I'm just trying to model the behavior for them so that as they're growing, like you'll see them trying to do squats or pick up like the 5-pound dumbbells, and just to develop those healthy habits. Because really I think through adaptive sports, like it's kind of an outlet. It's an outlet for stress. It's somewhere that I can go to turn off everything else that's going on in the world and have my quiet time, my time to recharge. So I hope that they find it, whatever it is. Maybe it's sports, maybe it's not going to be that. But know that there are things out there. This family is not just about the sports, and it's just not about warrior games. It's about having someone to lean on, like, hey, like I'm struggling right now, or maybe like a cancer returns, or maybe you have a setback in your injury and you need to go in for another surgery, or maybe you're just in a dark place. Like, it's knowing that, hey, like you're not alone in AFW2 or just in general.
When we come back, the head of the Army's Future Vertical Lift program talks to us about what's coming up in next generation helicopters. Welcome back. Helicopters are an iconic part of the Army arsenal, and developing the next generation iteration is a big task. As part of a recent webcast, the head of Army's Future Vertical Lift program sat down with Defense News' Jen Judson about where his program's efforts stand. Here's some of what he had to say.
Welcome, Major General Rugen, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. I'm going to dive right in with a burning question we all have. Where is the Army in preparing to choose a winner for the Future Long Range Assault Aircraft, or FLRAA, competition? Can we expect an announcement soon? September has been the time frame thrown out by in recent months by Army officials. Is that still the case?
Oh, we're in our quiet period, and what I can assure everyone is the Army will do this to the utmost standard, and that utmost standard is being heavily worked on every day.
All right. So once you pick a winner, what's the plan? What can we expect to see from the winners in terms of delivering aircraft along a timeline? Are you still hoping to see this fielded by 2030? Is there any potential that timeline could change?
Again, we're operating off of a 4-year acceleration that we worked on just a couple of years ago, and the tremendous successes we saw out of the Joint Multi-Role Tech Demonstrator, and then 2 rounds of significant risk reduction where Congress, invested heavily in getting those 2 rounds of risk reduction. we're finishing up that risk reduction now. And again, this effort to prototype or, fly before we buy has been very valuable. And then in addition, the aggressive red teaming, so those independent tech readiness assessments that look at the risk, that look at the tech, outside of the FVL team writ large between me and the PEO Aviation, someone external that has been able to point at the risk and say, hey, drive that down to get after your goals. So no, 4-year acceleration, the guys are moving fast. I think what you're going to see mid-decade is flying prototypes. So those test articles will be out mid-decade, and we'll be flying those. And that's really the next thing that I'm working on.
Okay. Now, obviously, there's been concern over the Army being able to afford and acquire 2 helicopters at once, both the FLRAA and the FARA aircraft.
Sure.
And you've made a case for why the Army has to acquire both in order to achieve what is needed operationally against highly capable threats.
Sure.
Are you getting the support you need from Congress to accomplish this ambitious task?
Yeah, very much so. I think, again, we've led a very transparent program. And, I point back to the inflection point we're at. When you look at the 90s and all the large major defense programs that Army Aviation was doing, there really wasn't room for that Comanche, or we'd had to choose between, upgrading a lot of Alpha model aircraft across Black Hawk, Chinook, and Apache. And so now when you look at our fleets are very well modernized across all 3 models that we fly and fight. And that really gives us the headspace to invest. And you're seeing that those fleet buyouts are happening. You're seeing Army Aviation budgets shrinking in the natural progression because they can afford to. And so what you see is a bit of a pause right now because we can. Those fleets are going to be bought out, and then we can jump to the future with investments in the advanced rotorcraft that are going to help us fight and win on future battlefields.
Okay. What has to be done to continue to maintain buy-in from the people that control the purse strings as you move forward?
It's analytical rigor, and it's experimentation, and it's demonstration, and it's prototyping. And so we are aggressive in our modeling. We are aggressive in taking those data and flying them out in the Western test ranges, as we've done routinely twice a year since 2019. We get flight actuals on all the things that we're doing across our weapon systems and sensors and all the packages that are going on these aircraft. And then we're pouring that in again to our requirements documents to make sure we're building things that are lethal, that are effective against our pacing and high payoff threats, but also informing that affordability side through, again, flight actuals. And so you'll see our OODA loop run aggressively over the next decade. We don't plan on stopping that. And then you'll see that transparent communication of that data back to the decision makers, to inform risk, risk to mission, risk to force, and also cost risk. And again, we're providing that analytical rigor. And then the last thing I would say, and we've just been through, another red team event, but we're not afraid to hire folks outside of our formations, outside the aviation enterprise, to come in and give us a good hard look at what we're doing to make sure we're not just talking in our own echo chamber. And so we've just finished up another red team on FARA in the FARA ecosystem, and that's flowed into a completion of an AROC. And so again, not afraid of that transparency.
Okay. What is your assessment as to how well Future Vertical Lift is competing within the Army modernization portfolio?
It's competing very well. And again, it goes back to what I just spoke to, is that analytical rigor and that data and the actuals. I think the prototyping has been phenomenally well received. And I go back to, FARA. We down selected to 2 vendors in March of 2020. which also was the kickoff of our pandemic that we've all worked our way through. But during that time period, another 2 design iterations from our performers. So a total of 3 design iterations. And oh, by the way, those ITEP engines coming and getting through the first engine to test. And so I think as we do what we say we're going to do, that resonates very well in the Pentagon, at OSD, and in the Army staff.
Okay, update us a little more on the FARA program. You mentioned that you recently went through another AROC. If you could talk a little bit about, if you can, the outcome of that, what came of that, and where the companies are in building their aircraft that you're hoping to see fly.
Yeah, so I think I'll take you back a little farther in history. In April 2019, we got our first appropriated dollar for FARA, and so in about 3.5 years, by my math, we got 2 prototypes that are about 90% complete. During that time, we also made a very strategic decision in the Army to pursue a developmental engine along with a developmental aircraft, because again, we felt that the ITEP technologies with, those in excess of 40% part reduction, the specific fuel consumption or gas mileage bump of 12 to 15%, and the time on wing was something that we wanted to follow through on. What it also did is it gives us, 1 engine for our FARA, Blackhawk, and Apache. And so plenty of obstacles within the pandemic and supply chain to get through that. But happy to report out, again, the prototypes are about 90% built. ITEP finished up its first engine to test here in June, even had some runtime in excess of what was programmed. They're tearing down that engine now, analyzing what's going on with the engine. And then GE will deliver 2 engines to the performers this November, which again allows us to fly next year. As I look at it, again, the prototypes are about 90% complete and the engine is out. And with the pandemic, very proud of the team and all the adversity that they've fought through. With those 3 designs, it was a natural time to look at our attributes. So we haven't set requirements yet for FARA. We're in the attribute space because we are prototyping, and the prototyping will inform our requirements, our final requirements. And again, that gets into what will be effective in our pacing theaters against our pacing threats, but also what will be affordable for our budget. And we will keep budget in mind. So again, very proud of the program and very proud of the efforts, and we're in a good space.
Up next, our personal finance expert gives her latest tips on how to make the most of your money. Welcome back. On this edition of Money Minute, Navy Federal Credit Union personal finance expert Jeanette Mack talks about whether engaging a financial consultant is the right move for you.
Whether you're thinking of getting into the stock market or you're one of the nearly 60% of Americans who say they already own stock, you may be wondering if you should talk with a financial advisor or go it alone. Well, it depends. Financial advisors can help you and your family build a solid plan for the future by customizing strategies unique to your needs and goals. They can also help maximize your contributions to the blended retirement system or your 401k and navigate market volatility and other complicated financial situations. But if your finances are simple, your initial investments are small, or you think you've got the know-how, you may not need a financial advisor. Digital investing tools or robo-advisors can help you quickly and easily research, buy, and track your investments with as little as $50. And they can also help develop investing strategies based on your tolerance for risk. Either way you decide to go, it's always smart to save for tomorrow, and investing can really amplify your savings.
Thanks, Jeanette. We'll see you next time. To get more of our military and defense coverage, make sure to check out our headlines online at Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps Times.com and DefenseNews.com. And for fresh headlines in your inbox every weekday, subscribe to our Early Bird Brief. Or if you prefer to get your news on social media, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And when we come back, the Army looks for a mobile communications update in this week's edition of MilTech. Welcome back. Communicating on the move and in the field is key to fundamental Army tactics. But is there a better way to do it? To get more mobile, the force is testing out some new capabilities. Todd South has more in this week's Mil Tech.
Comms. Communications, the functional glue that holds all modern military operations together. Also the bane of the existence of nearly every radio operator, data officer, or whatever they're calling military communication professionals these days. Many a soldier, sailor, airman, or Marine has spent countless hours fine-tuning old radios, throwing copper wire up in the trees to get a signal, and readjusting the antenna for the 1,000th time to hit the exact right azimuth. Satellite communications are only slightly less headache-inducing. You pop out your antenna, you hook up your cables, you get the right aim point to your satellite, and boom, you're in business. Talking loud, talking clear. Well, most of the time. Other than satellite phones, which can't do all of the communications that troops need, SATCOM is still a little complicated. There are big dish antennas, sometimes specialized cable cuts and connectors. All of that means heavy gear, often carried in a vehicle. And while copper wire blends well with tree branches, a dish atop a building might stick out, painting a target where you've planted a communication node, meaning you're the target. Realizing it might need to improve its mobile communications suite in the near future, the Army recently held an evaluation of communications on the move, or OTM, and more specifically, at the quick halt satellite communications, meaning move, stop, communicate, no big setups. To get a baseline for where they really need to go, in early June, soldiers with the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team, or the Spartans, out of 3rd Infantry Division, did a communications pilot at Fort Stewart, Georgia. They looked at beyond the line of sight communications. That basically means over the horizon and long distance, without the extra added service charges and fees. For those of you born before, say, 2000, long distance charges, they were a thing. You had to pay extra if you want to call somebody outside. Forget it. They also work with mesh network devices. A mesh network comm is basically creating a running network over the air that continually updates for the best signal and best frequency path, and also can transfer data packets and other information through kind of like internal retransmission from each of the radios that are connected to the network. That method helps avoid jamming and allows soldiers to run radios in tricky places like tunnel systems or dense urban areas. The Spartans, it's just fun to say out loud, also work with flat panel satellite terminal links, and that's a way users can avoid setting up massive dishes and associated gear. The tech also allows for a petite, by military standards, SATCOM equipment. Not part of that demo with the Spartans, but another interesting SATCOM development that Military Times recently spotted is coming from a company called Tamper Microwave. That company works with a larger Thales company, and they're both now working with Special Operations Command, or SOCOM, testing out suitcase-sized satellite communication systems that fold up and pop out and open about as easy as a laptop. That means more discreet SATCOM setup in crowded and always watching urban terrain. The gear, called Radar Scout, also features fewer components and a quicker setup. The new device shrinks the footprint down from 3 much larger pieces, think big dishes, into an all-in-one item. The company put this equipment together on its own, appealing to the trimmed-down nature of special operations and SOCOM missions. And Tamper Microwave is no garage tinkering operation. They already provide program of record satellite gear that they're trying to replace for SOCOM. Company officials told me that they began working with SOCOM testers who are evaluating prototypes of the Radar Scout as a possible added SATCOM option for special operators. While the device is currently geared for a small footprint on special operations missions, it provides enough power and capability to be used by other military units who need to shrink their gear, but also still want to talk across the globe. And don't worry, for all things shrinking tech and more, we'll keep an eye out. For Military Times, this is Todd South.
And that's all we have time for this week. Please visit us on militarytimes.com and defensenews.com for more coverage. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.